Hello and welcome. I'm Nurry Hong, a parent advocate for FAIR, and your host for this discussion about the future of food allergy and food science. This is part of Living Teal Food Allergy Awareness Week, and I'd like to start off by thanking FAIR for creating this opportunity and for using its trusted, independent voice on behalf of over 85 million people who live with food allergies and food intolerances. Today, we have a chance to celebrate Living Teal Food Allergy Awareness Week with Dr. Anat Binur. Dr. Binur is the co-founder and CEO of UKKO, a biotech startup backed by top-tier Silicon Valley investors, and has a mission to solve food allergies and sensitivities, amongst other solutions within the food allergy and food production space. UKKO uses patient data and machine learning to guide the engineering of food proteins that can be incorporated into food products, plants, and therapeutics. In terms of Anat's background, previously Anat was an investment partner at Innovation Endeavors, a venture firm backed by Alphabet's Eric Schmidt. Anat is also the co-founder of Meet, an education nonprofit that since 2004 has partnered with MIT, Google, Facebook, and others to develop a tech and entrepreneurship program empowering a network of Palestinian and Israeli leaders to create positive change in their communities. That's very cool. Anat also worked for Israel's state attorney on Capitol Hill and with the World Bank. She received her PhD from MIT, an MPA from Columbia University, and a law degree from Hebrew University. Hi, Anat.
Hi, Nurry. How are you?
Anything I left off from that impressive background and resume?
No. Thank you. No, I think you captured everything well.
Well, thanks for joining and having this conversation. I think we should just give full disclosure to everyone who's listening into this or watching this that you and I do know each other, and we've gone back a few years now, primarily through our journey in food allergy innovation. And so this is pretty cool that I get to have the chance to talk to you. And I think you and I are just supposed to talk about everything related to UKKO and food allergy and innovation. So this should be fun.
Super fun. I'm really excited to be here. And I think it's so great to be doing this with you because we both had these journeys that I think reflect kind of the innovation happening in the space and a lot of the hope in the future. So I'm really excited to chat with you.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. And again, thank you to FAIR for putting this on. And
yeah,
of course, just standing behind all innovation and everything that's going on within within what you and I care so much about. So let's talk about that. So you are the co-founder of UKKO. So first off, just give everybody an overview. What is UKKO? What are you guys about? Where does the name come from?
So let's start with the name. UKKO is actually the name of a god from the Finnish mythology. So from Finland, and it's the god of harvests and rains and crops. And as you'll see in a minute, very related to what we do. And yes, I co-founded UKKO together with my co-founder, Professor Yanaya Fran, back in 2017. And the short gist of it is we're a biotech company really focused on eradicating food allergies and food sensitivities. We're starting with gluten sensitivities, including celiac and also peanut allergies, but really the mission is much broader, and our technology can later on be applied to any of the major food allergens. And at the core, we've developed an engineering platform that combines kind of the most edge technologies, AI, really advanced protein engineering, immunology, kind of ties everything that we know about the human body and everything that we now know about food and beyond. And it allows us to design proteins in very precise ways so that we can keep all their good qualities like biophysical, biochemical, and even therapeutic qualities, and get rid of, let's call it the bad qualities, which are those parts of the proteins that are actually triggering an immune response in people who have food allergies or sensitivities. So then you get proteins that are equal to the safe, to the regular kind, but completely safe. Or will be. Of course, we have to continuously develop and test this in trials. And as you said in the beginning, they will be applied towards the food sector and also therapeutics.
Okay. What did you just say? No.
Yeah, I can.
Let's go. Let's go one by one. Let's go one by one. So that's okay.
Simplify
it. Of course, I know what you're up to, and it's incredibly exciting that you're basically taking everything we know about what causes food allergies and sensitivities and other intolerances, those triggering effects in those proteins, those food proteins, that is. And so when you ingest them, what's going on in terms of our immune response? And as we all know, within the food allergy space, there are things like immunotherapy, which is delivering the antigen or the food protein to help, desensitize or reach, some level of tolerance.
Yeah.
However, we also know that that comes with a lot of the side effects because those proteins have not been changed in a way that remove the part that we're allergic to or that patients are allergic to. And so
Yeah.
what you're trying to do, if, to explain that, is really engineering better proteins or versions of these that can be either used, I guess, as a drug. I think you mentioned also, I think you mentioned to grow, but let's talk about, where the plant science
Yeah.
and the agriculture part comes in as well. Um, and you're doing that using, so like the best of molecular technology, DNA technology, and artificial intelligence and machine learning, right?
Yep.
Okay,
And
so
really just to bring it home, maybe for a second, to simplify, I would say you're exactly right. When you look at the space today, lots of efforts going on, right? They're usually very siloed. People are either focused on the cure or therapeutic, knowing what we know about the human body, or on the food. Can we somehow get better wheat or get a peanut that's hyperallergenic? Super siloing what we know about our immune system and what we know about proteins. Anuka really ties it together through the platform you described. And the end result, just to make it really bring it home, is kind of on the food side, we're creating gluten that eventually will be safe. It's especially designed for people with celiac and sensitivity, and allow bakers, bakeries, home cooks, and food companies to really bake amazing, incredible bread, pizza, pasta doughs. You could replicate everything that's in imagine your favorite bakery. You could walk in there and everything there would be safe for anyone to eat. On the food allergy side, you mentioned immunotherapy, and I think there's been a lot of breakthroughs and advancements in the space. But one of the main hurdles continues to be the safety of it, right? And it limits the kind of patients who can participate, the experience as we go through it, dropout rates, lifestyle challenges, and really hard maintenance phase afterwards, which puts a big, big burden on families and kids, clinicians. So the goal of UKKO is to use these really advanced capabilities to really create a new approach in the space where you get the same kind of protein, but it'll be very safe. So the end result, our hope, and what we're aspiring to and what we're driving to in our development is to create a safe therapeutic for all food allergies.
that's very okay. So that's amazing, first of all, both for all the different solutions that you could, provide for these patients who have, let's face it, just insufferable unmet need daily in their daily living.
Yeah.
But also, just taking the science side of it for a second. I mean, it's really cool how you are integrating all the different components of human biology, molecular technology, but then the machine learning part, this computational part of it. Can you describe, what does that mean to the average person who, may not understand what goes into an AI machine learning platform for biotech drug discovery? I mean, we use these big words to describe that,
Yeah.
but what does that mean?
I mean, first I'll start with maybe how things were done, and kind of when you think about what goes into development of, let's say, a drug or a new protein, tons of super complex data and variables. And in the past, it was really hard to parse those out and start connecting dots and correlations and use that data that you may amass in order to develop something that's very precise and matching what we're trying to kind of achieve. So what UKKO does is we first gather a lot of data. How do we do this? We work with hospitals all over the world, get a lot of patient samples. And we use these samples to really map at a very atomic level. What is it on proteins that's actually triggering the allergy, and how is one person different from the other? So this is data. Now, when we say AI and machine learning, it means now we can look at this data and really quickly parse it out to the level that helps us understand very, very minute details. So now that we can predict and design proteins in the way I described, where you kind of keep good qualities and design, enhance even the good qualities, but get rid of the bad qualities, which are those parts of proteins that are triggering the immune system like crazy when you're one of the people who has a food allergy, for example. So machine learning helps us to move very quickly and really create maps at such granular level that weren't possible before, just without these really big machines and computers that could look at this and build the right algorithms. So it allows us to move faster, be much more precise, and identify characteristics that just, it wasn't possible even to locate them and identify and know that they exist before. And that opens up, massive room for innovation and I think a lot of hope.
That's thanks for explaining that. I think it also, I think for anyone, I think anyone could understand that if you're really trying to understand the characterization of what is making you allergic or responding in an allergic or intolerant way, and then understanding what's going on at the human biology level, and then combining that with all the other environmental factors that might be involved, you can just imagine the number of data points and interactions that are happening. Yeah. And it's, the machine learning is what you're using as a platform to really untangle and unpack all of that, which is, obviously the future of, where we're going with medicine and drug discovery and research.
Yeah, and synergies. I mean, you and I have talked about this in the past, right? You're amassing a lot of data and understanding of one aspect of what's going on in our body. Kanuko's looking at another aspect of it. Imagine when you start to be able to connect all this data pieces. It's so massive. It has so many different variables. They're so complex that really we need this idea of machine learning, as it's called, where the idea is, can we simplify? Can we understand different correlations, different things that are going on in that data that we couldn't understand without the computing capabilities?
And I think it's relevant to raise this because we're here talking about Food Allergy Awareness Week on behalf of FAIR, who is the largest organization representing patients. And you just talked about the need for patient samples, patient data, patient participation. And we're doing all of this to solve patient needs. All that understanding and that information, we couldn't do it without the patient. I think that should first and foremost go recognized as part of what we do, as biotech, drug discovery, and innovators.
Yeah, it has to be a deep partnership. I think from day one, and I think FAIR, really does a lot of work to bridge the different partners and bring them around the table. And it's a deep partnership from the patients to, innovative companies, startups like ours, to clinics, to kind of some of the bigger pharma companies and food companies. And I think we're seeing more and more those partnerships come together because this touches everyone's lives. I've never, it's amazing, when we were raising around for UKKO, I don't think we were ever on a call, whether it was with a VC or another startup, or where this issue of food allergy and sensitivity wasn't on the table, wasn't touching the person's life in some way. And it's astounding, I don't remember this growing up. I grew up in Israel and the US, and it wasn't this prevalent and didn't have this level of awareness. And I think we're really at a turning point in that sense, also in a positive sense, that people are really coming around the table wanting to solve this.
I couldn't agree with you more. Running around and talking to people, as an advocate, as in my professional interests, working in the biotech space within food allergy, the reception from people who have who know science, who know how biotech R&D work, who know just healthcare and how healthcare innovation works. I think they get the story that you have been telling and that FAIR has been preaching, and I've been pounding about this early life development of loss of immune tolerance and the role of what's going on in our bodies and exposure to things like food that are causing unhealthy reactions of all kinds. And this relationship and needing to think about solutions to intervene, it's within the food space, but then I think they also understand this has broader implications as you think about just disease and chronic disease and the role of food in health. So it goes even broader in terms of at least the reception and the conversations that I see happening and the reception to what we're talking about.
Totally agree with you. I get the same sense of things. And I think there's a real shift happening in that sense. I think we're both feeling in the environment. You and I have talked about this before, and I think it's again, I think it bodes well for where innovation's going in the space.
Right. And it's almost as if we can't do it fast enough, right? Like just continue to break down those barriers. We talk about this all the time. Yeah. I think you started this whole thing off by saying the siloed nature of some of the aspects that you were trying to integrate. Yeah. It's that at the biology level, but it's also that at the kind of just the ecosystem of research that needs to happen at scale.
Yeah, I mean, even our story really starts with my co-founder, with Yanai's research, and he comes from the worlds of bioinformatics and biophysics. He'd been working on a problem set, his academic life, and he even has another company kind of in the drug development space, totally synergetic, like not focused on food allergy. And he really connected the dots at some point in really interesting ways. And I think those are when the conversation becomes broader, and when you have those interdisciplinary players around the table, that's when the dots start to connect. And today, I think we need to start bringing as much as possible different technologies together to solve this.
Yeah. Well, you and I are going to always collaborate and do something together. So,
Yeah,
at least there's that.
that's
Okay.
for
So
sure.
let's talk about the future. So what's going to happen? So just to be clear, you have multiple products in development, therapeutics for
Yeah.
gluten. You're also going after food allergy in the future as well. What about other solutions or plant, agricultural applications? Can you speak
Yeah.
to what you see coming down, in that
Yep.
different kind of side industry? It's not side
So
industry
just
is not the
first,
right way to describe it, but
no, it's
a
like the
different way of
industry,
approaching the
because
solution.
it touches everything that, our food is such a part of every aspect. So I totally know what you meant. Um, First, I should say at a very high level, I think this question of like health, food and medicine, the lines between these things are really starting to blur, even at an industry level. You see many companies there, food companies moving more towards the pharma space, companies in the pharma space really looking at food as either a prevention mechanism or even a cure, or how, for example, UKKO looking at food proteins and engineering, designing them suddenly to fit both those worlds to really answer what it means when we say something's healthier and better for you. So in the case of UKKO, one product that we're working on is a gluten that will be designed especially for people with celiac, as I said before, and will allow us to bake and really solve the problem of gluten-free, which is that it's, one, not very tasty, but even more importantly, it's often, not always, but often less healthy, because you have to compensate for the fact that there's no gluten, so you add a lot of additives and so on. The amazing thing about UKKO and how it brings all these things together is that we actually, grow this gluten through crops like wheat and corn. We also ferment it. And we are doing something similar to peanuts. So while in food allergy and in peanuts, we're really working on a next generation immunotherapy, a drug, we are also working on the crop side. And I think it'll allow us a really holistic food to therapeutic approach in how we look at this, from potentially even diagnostics to prevention, all the way to kind of, hopefully, and our mission is a safer immunotherapy, maybe even down the road a cure.
That's exciting. I think everybody is excited about that. It's going to be available next year, right?
Tomorrow. Well, if you ask my board, no, R&D takes time, but we're definitely, our target is clinical trials within the next year and a half to two. So we're getting there. And I think things are, moving faster than they ever did before. So
I know of a food allergy clinical network that you could use for your clinical trials.
really? You might have heard of them. And I have to say, I think they're very supportive of this, and and a lot of patient organizations across celiac and food allergy have really both been reaching out, very collaborative. It's very much the way we like to work, and we're dependent on the ability to work and kind of share resources and think together how to solve this.
Well, I love that all those different type of groups are working together and thinking, about common solutions. I mean, they're not all directly, the same problem at the root cause, whether it's celiac versus food allergy versus other sensitivities or intolerances, but there's common learning and resources and other, research that obviously has a lot of meaningful synergy. So it's really fun to see that, or exciting, and I think inspiring to see that people are willing to break down barriers and continue to work on that, in a more collaborative way.
Yeah. And I think we need more of it, just to be clear, right? I think we're just in the beginning of it, and there's a good shift. We definitely need more of it, but I do see a change even in the several years since we started UKKO. Food companies are really understanding the severity of this and why it needs to be something they're more aware. I think there's more to be done there, but we're definitely more there than we were in the past. And pharma companies are becoming more interested in the space. Definitely, there are more startups working on it. So obviously in academia and clinics, they've been a leading force in innovation and kind of research for advancing what we know about food allergies.
And remember when we first met? I mean, it's like 3+ years ago now, and the landscape in food allergy and what we were talking about then. Palforzia wasn't approved. We kind of assumed
Yeah.
that we would get traction and attention in this space with their development. So that's all happened, and look at what's happened since. And
Mm.
it's night and day, it feels like, in terms of just the momentum behind this, this field in terms of research and really doing the kind of things that you just mentioned.
Yeah. And I think, we're at the beginning of it. Like, I think the more companies like yours, Anuko, and other innovative companies that are around are out there talking to investors, getting into trials, as has been happening even the past few weeks, that's really going to lead the way.
Mhm.
It shows people that you can de-risk this and that there's an opportunity. And I think patients are more and more empowered in the way they're engaging both with the regulatory aspect of this and innovation. So I do think that's critical.
I'm going to end with two kind of broad questions related to the future of science, I guess. So
Yeah.
no sweat. I'm going to just ask you a simple question, where are we going with
No pressure.
AI? Yeah. Where are we going with AI in drug R&D? I mean, is this the future, and are we going to just be able to do everything in a box one day, or what eventually happens with that capability? And we talked about the long timelines for R&D and how we
Yeah.
want to accelerate it through AI. Just give us some insight from from the driver's seat a little bit.
You know, uh, I think there's a lot of talk about whether everything will be able to be done in a box. I think a lot of people agree that that's maybe far, far off, and that's not happening in the near future. But the impact here is huge on your ability to really save time, costs, and lives, often by just predicting and creating kind of a faster way to understand targets, identify disease, match them with targets, design the target better. You cannot compare what's going on today even with 3 or 4 years ago when we're starting UKKO. And again, going back to UKKO, when you think about food allergy in the past, people looked at it as people understood big pieces, right? A protein and what it causes. It was much harder to understand the granular level. And to really unlock this, we have to understand what precisely on the protein is triggering. How is one person different from another? Those parts, the epitopes on the protein, those really minute parts on the protein that are actually triggering allergies, which ones of them are actually correlated with severity. Those are things we have to unlock in order to create holistic end-to-end solutions here. And I think AI, machine learning, this is going to help us get there faster.
Well, that's why you were successful in raising money for the company, because you didn't say that everything would just happen in a box. And you need,
No,
science and immunology and all the other stuff that go along with
clinical
it, of
trials.
course. Exactly.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
what's also interesting is maybe you can speak to some of the crazy stuff where AI has broken through and done it better than, what we call wet biology or in, bench side, lab work. I mean, there have been some major breakthroughs where AI, you can kind of see how AI being
Yeah.
introduced to what we do is going to transform, that level of precision.
Yeah, you and I were talking about it a few days ago. I'd love for maybe you can comment on too. I think kind of one of the hard things, even for us, is understanding structure of proteins, right? And predicting them, because if you understand that, you can really unlock lots of data, move faster, and so on. And one of Google's companies, just had this huge jump in the space in a way that I think is gonna change the future of science, innovation, drug discovery, almost everything we touch. So
Well, what you're saying, like what you're talking about, is this competition that happens every year in the drug R&D space, where they see
yeah,
who can create the best base mimic a protein structure the most accurately, because that's a very difficult thing to do. So there are all these techniques of doing that, and people have been trying to perfect these techniques so you can characterize proteins well. And I think it was last year, a recent winner, the most recent winner, was a winner that characterized a protein completely in a box using AI machine learning methods, and it was a Google company that did that. So it was one example where you can't fully replace, the biology, but you can do a lot by applying machine learning to it.
yeah, yes. And
Yeah.
I think, I can say that our team watch this in awe. And many of them see this as probably one of the biggest breakthroughs of their, maybe lifetime, definitely in the past few years, but way beyond. So I think that's just one huge example of where we're going with this.
I'm going to just throw out a crazy side note. I heard that they also do some protein characterization on the International Space Station without gravity, because the gravity weighs down that folding process on Earth. So when you can do that in a lighter gravity environment, you can actually get better characterization. That blew my mind. Apparently that's informed some drug discovery efforts though.
I want to say that for our gluten proteins, we are actually talking to a group that's interested in someday maybe taking them up to space and testing a little bit some of the things we're doing with no gravity. So yeah, crazy things are going on, but I think a lot of them can lead to good. And it's another thing I want to say, there's something happening now, and UKKO and what you're doing, great examples of this, where really these technologies also for us on the food side are being leveraged to create clear human value, right? So on the food side, you see today that we can look at sustainability different because we can create meat without a cow, right? Or milk without the cow. Same with UKKO, you can suddenly use these technologies to make food safer, really safer, healthier, more accessible for people in that sense. That's a shift in what some of these things are being used for, right? It's putting really the human being and what's important to us as humans first. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind.
That you couldn't have said it any better. I'm not sure I want to ask another question because that's a great way to end the discussion. I guess I will ask you, any parting thoughts or any remaining comments that you would like to leave the audience with?
I think just the dialogue, just like you and I have, and we have such an open, collaborative dialogue. I think dialogue here is really important. I think it's the responsibility of startups like ours, UKKO definitely, to stay very deeply connected to the patient community, have transparency, be really open and connected, make sure that we are working at the gold standard of safety, and with the top people in the world, which we are, advisors are really the top of the top, in order to make sure that what we're doing is engages and involves the patient input from day one. And I think that's true for everyone, again, that's around the table, really thinking about how we continue with this dialogue, how we can contribute to solve this problem, because this has been a rough year in the world. A lot's going on. This is one problem. Food allergies is massive, it's huge. I think we can solve it. There are other problems that it's going to take many, many decades maybe for us to solve. I think we can start to see really the glimmers of hope here, but it requires everyone to kind of really engage in a very open way around it.
Thank you for saying that. I as a food allergy dad, thank you for being a leader in a biotech company to always put the patient first. Again, I completely agree and commend you for making those comments. And of course, that's what my company is also trying to do, is just make sure the patient is always first. If we're developing drugs, who is that for, and keeping that front and center. So I think that's why we're here and want to share what we're doing.
Exactly.
As tough and exciting as it is, we couldn't do it without the patient, and we appreciate the opportunity. Anat, thanks for joining. Really,
Nurry,
it's always awesome.
So great to talk to you.
It's always great to catch up. For our audience, thank you for joining. We appreciate it. And until I guess next year's Food Allergy Awareness Week, we'll sign off for now. Thank you.
Bye.